Hi friends, today's video is going to be all about the KuneKune hog, which is going to be the darling pig of homesteaders. Pretty much every homesteader you talk to out there is going to say why you have to have KuneKunes because they're the best thing ever. And then you've got the production pig producers and butchers and people who say you should absolutely avoid the KuneKune. I'm Mike with Ozark Homesteading Chronicles. I'm going to go over some things this morning inside while I'm getting the feed ready, and then Karen's going to really go through out there with the hogs, pros and cons. We raised 26 KuneKunes just a little over a year ago. We got the first ones. We had 2 breeding pairs, and we're going to go through what we learned in the last year, the pros and cons, as well as really what we wish we would have known before we bought the KuneKune hogs. At the end, we're going to talk about what our plans are for hogs going forward, and what we're really hoping to do out of this video is give you the knowledge that you need to make the right decision on picking the best hog for your homestead. Now with that, we've also put together just a kind of a guide on how we're determining what animals are the best fit for our homestead. I'm going to do a full video on how we break that down later, but just so you have an idea of what we're looking at in an animal, I'm just going to give you a quick overview on that in this video, so that way you guys can start evaluating, hey, is the KuneKune the best hog, or should we look at something else? Now, if you would, before I forget, go ahead and comment down below what hogs you're raising on your homestead or your farm, why you like them and why you're raising them, or maybe even what you're looking to raise, because I'd love to see what everybody else is doing and why they like what they have. All right, so this chart is just going to show what we've started putting together to determine if the animal's a fit or not for our homestead. So the first one is going to be the animal's purpose, and I'll get into that a little bit more with the KuneKunes on here. The second one is going to be the cost, and I really want you to think through the cost, because you got to go through what is the initial purchase cost on that. You know, is it something that's going to be a registered hog? Is it going to cost more? What are we looking at? How available is it in your area? You may have to spend a lot if you're going outside of your area to get it there. What are your feed costs for the animal? Pigs that are not going to be on pasture are going to eat quite a bit of grain. We also feed alfalfa pellets. And even if you're supplementing with your waste, there's still going to be quite a bit of feed that goes along with any hog. What kind of shelter are you going to need to put together for this animal? What kind of fencing are you going to need to have to keep everything contained? And then, you know, are you going to have any medical care? I mean, how much is your vet bills going to be? Are you able to do that on your own? And then butchering. Are you going to butcher this yourself? Or are you going to have someone butcher it for you? What is the cost on that? So there's so many costs that go into that people don't think about up front. So that's something I'd like you to consider when you're figuring if any animal is a right fit for your homestead. Time. This is going to be 2 different parts. You know, one is going to be the time that you spend every day investing in that animal. And then also, how long are you going to care for that animal before that animal completes its purpose? And we'll go over the purpose, but there's a lot of things other than just meat an animal may have purpose for. So how long is that going to be? And I would highly recommend, if you don't have extra time, more than double of what you think it's going to take for that animal every day to work with it, I would hold off on that animal until you have time that's freed up to be able to do that, because we always overestimate how much time we're going to have and how long it takes to get everything done. The other one is going to be an honest list of pros and cons. So many times when we get excited about a specific thing that we want to bring on, it's easy to overlook the things that maybe are cons, and we just add all the pros in there. And so you really should go through and watch more than just this video. Do some research online. Figure out with each animal what are the animal specific pros and cons. Make a big list of that, as well as comparing everything else that you go through with these other 3 things. And that's going to help you make the best decision. You know, should we bring this animal on the homestead? Should we look at a different animal? You know, and sometimes it may not even be the right fit to look at the animal at all right now. So let's go back to the first one and talk about the animal's purpose. So source of meat is going to be the obvious one that everybody thinks about, like, hey, we have animals, we're going to eat them. And that is definitely something that you want to consider with that. But what about the health benefits from quality farm-grown meat? You cannot get this type of quality in the grocery store. And not only do you get the meats, but if you're taking care of it yourself, you can also get things like the bone broths and the organs, so many of the other things that you were never able to buy in the grocery store. Some other things just real quick is you can reduce food waste. You can have them clear forest, woods, overgrown pastures. There's a lot of things pigs can do to clean up your property. They can improve gardens. They can also clear out gardens. You're going to see one that we've got a future garden site where we've got a hog on it today. They can clean up parasites from other farm animals if you have them following your herd going around the property. We can have profit from them. I would caution you though on this profit. You're going to see some people that promise some pretty big profits in Kunekunes. I don't think you're going to realize those type of profits if they're really talking how much money you can make in those for the average homesteader. If you want to really dig deep into maybe how to do that, that's something that you can do. But overall, I would look very skeptical at someone who's telling you you're going to make a ton of money in hogs of any sort right now, and especially Kunekunes. And then there's just a pure entertainment. I mean, Karen loves with the hogs. She always spends a little more time with them than she needs to do chores because they make her day brighter. She loves just seeing them go out there and be pigs. So I'm going to tackle the obvious one at the very top, is the source of meat for people, because that's what everybody's thinking about originally. Because if we're thinking hogs, we're thinking bacon, right? I mean, that's where I'm at. And also my sausage. I have sausage and bacon every morning with my breakfast and my omelet. So with a KuneKune, you are still going to be able to get bacon, but it is not going to be those huge slabs of bacon. Same way with the ribs, the chops, some of the other cuts. They're going to be much smaller. KuneKunes are a lard hog. And that's something you want to think about right away. Are you looking for a meat hog or a lard hog? So with the lard hogs, first off, they're gonna normally take a lot longer to grow out. There's the breeds that don't, but as an average, you're gonna see a really long time, like anywhere from 12 to 18 months for the Kunekunes to grow. Because if you feed them like you feed a normal hog, they are gonna blow up like a balloon. And even when you do feed them over a longer period, you're still gonna have a lot more lard than meat. So that's going to be a pro and con right there. If you're going to get back almost half of your meat from the butcher shop in lard, and that's not something that you use much of, then that's going to be a complete con for you. Our family, we use a ton of lard. We cook with everything with lard. We also use tallow, but right now we don't have enough beef to have a lot of tallow for us. And so the lard is going to be our main cooking fat. Now, if you're the person that thinks that animal fats like lard, tallow, butter are not healthy for you, I recommend doing a little more research, because we've been told for years that those things you probably should avoid. And I would just suggest, there's a couple books I put down in the links, some from Sally Fallon, from Ken Berry. There's a lot of others I could mention to you. You might realize that that's what you should be eating, is plenty of animal fats. But I'm not going to get on a side, John, on talking about how you should eat today. I'm just going to tell you that that's something that we eat a lot of, is the lard. Now, I love butter too. Matter of fact, I like butter almost probably a little bit better than lard, depends on the cooking situation. The problem with butter, and even though we have our own milk cow and we can produce butter, it takes a lot of cream to make butter, and it takes a lot of milk to make the cream. This jar right here, this is how much cream from the top of this down that came down. Now that's all the cream, and we ended up taking just the top portion of that cream up here, which is the heavy cream, to make the butter. So then this other part of the cream, the light cream, we don't even use that for the butter on there. So it's going to take, as you can see, a lot of gallons of this to make butter. And then even when you go through and you make the cream, you're still going to have a lot of buttermilk that comes off of that. So you end up with quite a bit less butter when it's said and done. Plus, it takes a while to make butter. Whereas one thing I love about doing the lard is when we butcher a hog, we're able to render down tons of lard at a time. Now, as much as I eat, we normally do this over the course of several different lard sessions throughout the year. I also make a smoked lard. I love smoked lard. It's almost like bacon fat, just on your griddle when you use it. I'll do a video on that coming up, show you guys how I make the smoked lard on there as well. So the lard is just an easier fat to get for us, so that's why we need so many pigs to make the lard, and that's one of the reasons we were really drawn towards the Kunekunes, is because they're a lard pig, so we can get quite a bit of lard from them on there. Now, you can still get fat and lard from the bigger pigs, but that's not going to be their main thing. They're going to have bigger muscles. So when we look at the ribs, we look at the bacon, we look at any of those things, the chops, they're going to be a lot bigger on a meat hog versus the lard hogs. And the meat hogs are going to finish out a lot faster. Those things are going to be ready in 6 to 8 months. They're going to be at full weight, ready to go on that. And right there we have some of our first pros and cons. If you don't want to work with a great big hog, if you feel more comfortable with a smaller hog, you like the Lard, you don't mind the smaller portions, and say you want to do a home butcher or process the hog on your place and you don't have the equipment to deal with a larger pig, then the KuneKune is going to be a huge pro for you. However, if you don't mind working with a little bit larger pig and you have the facilities to process your own larger hog, or you're going to take it to a butcher, and you like the bigger cuts, you like the big slabs of bacon, you like the big chops, things like that, then you're going to want to look at a meat hog because you're just going to get those cuts of meat. Now you can still get the same amount of meat by doing multiple KuneKunes for more of them than you would for the regular size hogs, but you're still always going to end up with those smaller cuts. Now the meat on the KuneKunes are going to be a little bit different. They're a pasture hog, so they're going to be a very tender meat. Matter of fact, when it comes to like charcuterie, some of the other, they are a delicacy for that. And I'm not saying this depends on what you're looking for. It may be a better meat for you to have the KuneKune versus a full meat hog. But there again, you just got to weigh out, do you like the bigger cuts? Do you like the more fat? What are you looking for in a pig there? For us, there's two other things that we use lard for. Well, one lard and then one pig fat that maybe a lot of families don't use, but I think that's something you may decide that would be a good benefit for you. I make pork rinds every week. We make our own pork rinds here. I love them. You should look at making pork rinds and actually getting rid of potato chips. If you are eating potato chips, they are not going to be healthy for you, and the pork rinds will give you a great replacement for those. I use them for breading. We use pork rinds for so many different things, and we fry those up in lard. They taste the best in lard. It's going to be healthy for you in lard. So we use a lot of lard. Matter of fact, this pot back here, it just lives on our stove because every week we're going to make a huge batch of pork rinds. Matter of fact, this is a size container that I make every single week, and between Karen, me, and even the dogs, we use them as dog snacks. We fill that up every week. The other thing that we use for pork fat is it makes great sausage. If you're a deer hunter, elk hunter, if you do anything that you're going to be getting meat that doesn't have enough fat internally to make their sausage, or even hamburger. If I shoot a deer and I'm going to make hamburger out of it, I'm absolutely going to mix in some pig fat, and that is going to make that taste so much better. I like to see about 25-30% fat versus the venison or elk, or even if you're going to do sheep, if you decide that you want to do sheep or goats and you want to mix that in there. Now, most of the stuff, if I'm going to butcher a sheep, we are going to use that in, they're more of a premium cut, so we're not going to make much hamburger out of that. But if that's something that you do want to make hamburger out of it, you cannot beat the back fat on a hog to make that some of the best hamburger or sausage that you can on there. All right, so let's go ahead and get this all mixed up so I can get out there and Karen can show you those pigs. So what we do is they get about 2.5 pounds of the 16% protein per pig per day right now when we're getting close to the end when we're finishing them out. And then they're going to get some alfalfa pellets. Now what we do with our alfalfa pellets is we soak those. So they're going to get about 1/2 pound of alfalfa pellets a day per pig. Now we do break both of those up over 2 feedings so they don't get all of that at once. We'll go once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Now the important thing that I think if you want a really good tasting pig is get yourself some whey or some skim milk. This is going to put good amount of fat on. It's going to really make them taste well. So this is going to be whey from our yogurt that we make. So what I do is with that pellets, we just go ahead and just dump this in here. If you're putting cold in, it does take a little bit for them to blow up. So it's going to take 30 minutes. You want to let this set so it really does reactivate, and get those to where they're soaked down well. And then skim milk. Now we're lucky since we do have a dairy cow and we make yogurt, cheese, we make stuff all the time. We have a huge amount of whey. And then any of our excess milk that we don't get processed, and we'll do things like cottage cheese and other things with the milk and some cheeses, but most of the stuff that we do with the milk is going to involve the heavy cream or the light cream or both. And so when we get a skim milk like this, that is a great food for the hogs. Hogs, chicken, they go crazy over this. Matter of fact, if they don't get their milk in there, they're going to be pretty upset when they look at the greens on there. Sounds like we have some visitors out on the pond. I'm going to take I'm not going to finish this here in a little bit. I'm going to go out there and get the drone. I'm going to show you guys. I think we have some fun visitors out there. I'll be right back. Well, I'm glad I heard them. I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I'm going to get this milk poured in here, and then we are going to go out, and Karen is going to show you our pigs and go over all the pros and cons out there with you.
One of the pros about these guys, they're big old lovable pigs. And I grew up with hogs, like regular meat hogs, not Kunekunes, and there's a night and day difference. These guys just act more like a dog than they do a pig, I feel like. So we even had one of the boars, Buddy was his name, and he really was a dog because he saw you expect either food or rubs. And he always got lots and lots of rubs, and he was a talker when he got his rubs. And yes, I could tell sometimes these are, some of them you can really tell which ones are Buddy's offspring for sure. Keep getting more and more over here. But yeah, their personality is phenomenal. Large breed meat hogs, though, you can definitely train them and tame them. That is not a problem. We grew up with meat hogs, and we had to tame them for the fair and for 4-H. So in order to show them, they had to get tamed. So it is definitely possible. It's no problem at all. One way to look at like personalities, maybe from the meat hog versus Kunekunes and lard hogs, is like a lab versus a pit bull. Labs are just naturally friendlier than a pit bull, but they're both, you can tame them and make them big lovable dogs as well. So that's one good way to kind of look at it, as with the meat hogs versus lard hogs. These guys are just naturally a friendly old little boogers, and they do want lots of attention. So, which is adorable. And that's actually a big downside for some people. They have a hard time butchering them and processing to eat them and to consume them for the table, for their family. So that's a big downer for some folks. Here, let's come over here so they can see you getting your belly rubbed. Oh, it's such a hard little piggy life here. Oh. You make a funny sound every time I touch your tummy. Yes. Try it again. One more time. Rooting, that is a very interesting topic, and I think discussion amongst Kunekune owners. Some people think they don't root at all, and maybe there's don't, and everybody has a different idea of what rooting is. Our Kunekunes root less than normal hogs, but they still root. No doubt about it. When we first got them, they were in the front part of the pasture, and the front part is fairly hard, and the grass didn't grow very well, or as good you might say. As we kept progressing them, they didn't root at first, but as we progressed them up into the pasture where it's more lush grass, we noticed where their water was, they were starting to work it up a little bit. But then we had rain within a day or two of that. And once it rained and that soft ground, they just tore up that paddock. And I mean, tore it up. I'll have Mike put pictures up for it. So they do, they definitely root. Ours root. Because of their personality and being such good pigs, we decided we're not just gonna get rid of them immediately. We're like, okay, let's just plan B. They're not going to be able to work for us on the pasture. Let's put them in some woods. Let's, give them a full shot here and make sure we can, if we want them or not want them. We just didn't want to give up on them immediately. So we did put them out here into the woods.
And we did make their paddocks a lot smaller on the pasture too, just to try to contain it. We tried several different spots on the pasture and just wondering if there's anything we could do to keep them on the pasture before moving to the woods.
Yes.
And there was just no way to get past them rooting. The breeding pairs were a lot better than the piglets.
Piglets were,
but the breeding pairs were still making a lot of wallers.
That was you boys.
Yeah, these guys were the ones that had a lot of problems.
That was these guys. And we considered is putting rings in. I decided not to put rings in for a couple of reasons. Is you can put rings in their noses, but they can still root. It doesn't guarantee it's going to stop them from rooting. So I didn't want to ring them and it still not even work and go through all of that hassle for them too, because that's not going to be a super pleasant experience. And with the breeding pairs, I didn't want to wrestle a 250 pound to 300 pound hog to put the rings in their noses. So we decided let's just put them into the woods And you'll see here the ground, it's hard under these trees, so they haven't rooted up. This particular spot is with our watering hole. And this is where we did start. And right here on the other side of the fence, it is grass. And I have to mow this all the time to keep it down. So it's a softer part right here. And that's happened to be where I started the water. I started watering here, and then they created a nice little watering hole for themselves. Pasture and shelter. Electric fence will keep in most hogs, no problem. And for us, we are running these guys, which is 2 strands of hot wire here, the poly wire. And it's been just wonderful for these guys, easy to keep in. If you don't do electric hot wire, you know, regular hog panels are fine too. We have a kind of was one of our pens when we first had it for the breeding pair. And what we did was one single strand of hot wire at the bottom. That prevented them from wanting to root and also just leaning against the panels as well. And that was fine. The one litter we had that was Miss Penny's litter was just like this right here, this, and the little bitty baby piglets, they kept them in. They never got out. So that I thought was very nice. Lard versus meat. Mike had already went through it earlier, but we use a lot of lard here. We cook with lard on everything. I even bake with lard for my breads, my pastry crust. I bake with the lard instead of using butter and things like that. What we're looking for is a larger pig that has the fat, so we can get the best of both worlds and still be able to utilize all of our lard as well, but have the bigger cuts of meat. So I will show you here in a wee bit. There's a gilt that we have. They're about the same age as these Kunes, and you'll be able to see the complete difference in size. She's much, much larger than the Kunekunes at the same age. So they just grow much slower, and their size is just a huge difference there. When it comes to feeding, if you're running your Kunekunes on pasture, having them graze on grass is a huge benefit because it does cut down your feed costs drastically. If you're not able to run them on pasture like us, we feed them more grain. So I give them grain, and then I also give them soaked alfalfa because I wanted them to still get the greens and the grass and nutrients from with the soaked alfalfa. And it has lots of good protein as well with the soaked alfalfa. We put whey. I actually soak them with whey and milk. Delicious. And if I don't put milk in there, these guys know it. They won't even eat it right away. It'll be the last thing to eat. But if it has milk, they will eat it out of my hand as I'm putting it down into their bowl. So that is one pro and con. If you can run them on grass in the pasture, they can have less feed costs all the way around. If you have a huge garden, or if you have a large family with lots of scraps every day, that can help reduce your feed cost as well because you're able to give that to your Kunes. We don't have a huge garden. We're more of a meat family, so we have less vegetables and gardening than a lot of folks do. So ours, we just don't have that kind of table scraps with our family.
With all the dairy products, we have all the whey
Yes.
and the skim milk and everything that really does add a lot. And,
Yes.
and I know the whey really makes those taste a lot better too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with the Kunes, you have to feed them twice a day. You can't just free feed them like you can meat hogs. Meat hogs, you can put an auto feeder in there, fill her up, and they just eat when they want throughout the day, as much as they want. Now, Kunes, you have to feed them twice a day because if you try to feed them with an auto feeder, they're going to get way too fat way too soon, which is not good because they are a slow growing hog, and you can't do that. So the meat hogs are a fast growing pig, so you can just throw them out there and check on your meat hogs once a day. And it doesn't sound like maybe it only takes you 15 minutes to feed your pigs that second time a day. 15 minutes may not seem like a lot, but usually it turns into more than 15 minutes from personal experience because you get distracted with something else or, you know, end up playing with them. So you're in about there for 20 or 25 minutes because you're having a good time with them. But that adds up throughout the day. So it's like us when I check on my chickens. I went to twice a day to once a day. Once I realized that all the eggs are being laid more later in the day, I start feeding late in the afternoon, early evening, and that saved me a trip. So by saving 15 minutes, not checking on them twice a day, you know, cutting out that morning routine, now I had 15 free minutes. If I cut out feeding these guys from twice a day to one a day, I have another 15 minutes. So that 15 minutes keeps adding up from both of them. So now I have 30 plus minutes, 30 minutes to an hour extra every day. When you're running a homestead, as a lot of you guys know, there's so many things just constantly going on. So that time is very, very valuable. So for us, that's a huge con or huge pro is to be with the meat hogs. I just check on them once a day. I go out there with their soaked alfalfa, give them their scraps, their whey, their milk, and things like that once a day versus twice a day. Now, Kunekunes, they eat less per day. However, you have to keep them longer. So because of you having to keep them longer, you have just as much feed into it, especially if you're feeding them grains. If you have to do grains versus they don't have mainly a grass grazing diet out there on the pasture. So with the grain feeding, you actually have just as much cost into the feed versus the meat pigs, because the meat pigs, they eat a ton in a short amount of time. The Kunes eat less, but over a much longer, more than double the amount of time to feed them out. And then you got to remember your time. So that is, for us, is going to be, again, a huge pro is the time, because we're only keeping those feeder pigs for a much shorter amount of time versus the Kunes. You have to go from 12 to 18 months after they're weaned to finish them out, versus feeder pigs, it's 6 to 8 months after they're weaned before you finish them out. So the time constraint that's a huge plus for us. Some folks, it may not be, a pro for them, and they're okay with that. That's something you guys have to determine what's best for your family and what you guys want. Timing. So I just talked about how much longer it takes to feed out Kunekunes versus the meat hogs. The other thing to really take into consideration, because of them taking so much longer to finish out and ready for butcher, you're going to have to go through one winter, possibly 2 winters with those butcher pigs, because of them needing that 12 to 18 months after they have been weaned. Now, the meat hogs, you won't have to do it into winter. If you time your farrowing correctly and you do it early in the year, you can butcher before winter even hits, and you don't have to even mess with any of those meat hog for butchering during the winter. So you don't have to go out there, and all you have to worry about then is if you're breeding pairs, if you have breeding pairs. So, and if you happen to be buying your meat hogs just after they're weaned from somebody else and then you're just finishing them out, then you don't have to mess with a pig at all whatsoever during the winter. So that is also a good pro for the meat hogs.
So talk about double bottles again.
One of the characteristics about Kunes is they have what they call double bottle. Right down there underneath their chin, you see these 2 little things dangling. That's what they call double wattles. So that's one
Some of them have single, some of them have double, but you really do want to try to find the double
wattles. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. That's the ones you're going to want. Now, registered versus not registered. Not every Kune is going to be registered. However, there's going to be a lot of them that aren't true Kunekunes. So you want to make sure, if you're not getting a registered Kunekune, that you need to make sure they come from a reputed breeder. And the reason I say that not all of them are going to be, because not all of them should be registered. Some people will register every pig in the litter, and that is not what it should be, because not everybody is truly breeding quality. If they're not breed quality, they need to be labeled as companion animals instead. You will definitely see the difference. For example, that little black one that was here, he should never be registered. He's way too little. He's a runt, and his characteristics of his width, there's so many things I can go on and on. He should not be registered. He should not be breeding stock. So that's the reason I say don't focus, though, completely on registered versus not registered. But if it's not registered, make sure you do get someone that is a reputable person and that actually does have true Kunekunes. That is one thing to definitely want to look at. Okay, let's get your food bowl. Come on back here, little lady. Here you go, sweetheart. She is about 20 months old, and to give you an idea of comparison in size, our Kunes are about 17 months old, so she's only 3 months older. Guessing she's about 450, just guessing. And we think the Kunes on average about 200, some are bigger, some are smaller. But you can kind of get an idea of size-wise. She is a gilt. She hasn't had a litter yet. This is our friend's pig. They did get her, and their intention was to breed her, But things changed, and they had asked us if we can help them butcher her. So we're actually going to end up butchering her here probably in a week or so, or 2 weeks, give or take, when we have time.
For now,
But
she's going ahead and tearing up our future garden spot.
she is. She's we didn't have time this year to do gardening. We focused on the animals this year instead of gardening. So this is the garden, but she's already did a number because this stuff was knee high or taller. As you can see maybe from the outside how tall it is, but she's already cleared this out pretty good, and she's made a massive little hole here. Her hole got big very quickly, I must say. But you're a big girl, aren't you? In conclusion, there's no way for us to tell you if Kunekunes are the right pig for your family or your homestead or your farm. We highly recommend is you writing down all the pros and cons and what your family is specifically looking for in your family pig. You're noisy little rascals over there, aren't they?
I don't know if you guys can hear this on the video, but they're going crazy over there.
Ah, they know she got fed already is what the problem is.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
They do. But yeah, we really do recommend is you guys really sitting down as a family and discussing the pros and cons, and really not just because Kunes are cute and adorable, but put down the real reasons that you do want them or not want something, and really what you're wanting out of your pig. For us, since we couldn't run them on the pasture with the rest of our animals as planned, if we could have, we would have kept the breeding pairs for sure, because I did love them. As pigs, they're a hoot and holler. But since we couldn't, we are going to find out and figure out a way to get the meat hogs with the lard that we want and that we need for our family and all of our cooking purposes. So we are going to do a little bit of experiment this year. We're not going to get breeding pairs right away. We're going to get one of each type of breed. We're going to get a Duroc, Berkshire, a large black. Forgetting what the other one is. Drawing a blank.
Hereford. I can't believe you forget the Hereford.
Oh, there you go, the Hereford. I know, that's so silly.
It's going to be next year, next spring, not
Yeah, you're right. It is. I feel like it's coming up. But anyway, yes, next spring, we're going to get one of each. And we're going to grow them out to see what we like for the meat and fat ratios and personalities and everything about each of the breeds. So that's what we are wanting to do, the experiment. And then once we decide, then we'll get the breeding pair that we like. Absolutely. And if you guys have any ideas or suggestions, we are open, just so you know. So in the comments below, feel free to put down what you got or what you might suggest, or if you know of something we're overlooking, please do tell us. Like I said, we are very open-minded, and
yeah,
we love your
what
suggestions.
You're raising and why you're raising it. And
yes, good. I like that. That's a good idea, Mike. Yeah.
Perfect. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel here.
And I really appreciate you guys joining us. I hope it was fun for you. Anytime I could be in front of an animal, it's fun for me. It's always
Especially
a good day.
pigs.
You know, especially those pigs. I think, yes, they're adorable. They need their ears and belly scratched. Who would think a pig wants their belly rubbed? But they do. Thanks a bunch, guys. You have a fantastic day.